All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to How to Build a Brand Strategy. Today is the 19th of November, and thanks for your time and for joining us. We're going to spend the next 55 minutes going through some slides on how your brand can formulate a really killer brand strategy to set you up for success. My name is Michael Coden. I am the head of marketing at Quo AI, and I'm joined by Jim Brennan, who's our managing director at Quo. Jim, how are you today?
I'm very well. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining.
We'll get into the nuts and bolts of the presentation in a second, but just to give you a bit of background on who we are, my background is very similar to Jim. Actually, the two of us come from Unilever. I spent 10 years there working in their brand development, in their brand building departments across the US, Australia, and the UK, primarily with focus on launching innovation and advertising communication and being responsible for developing the brand strategy for Lynx, also known as Axe in the States, if you're dialed in from North America. And Jim, do you want to say a quick hello to those that are with us here today?
Yeah, absolutely. I was also at Unilever for a while too, and also sold deodorant to teenagers, and then latterly sold or tried to sell yellow fats, so margarine, to the ever reducing number of people who wanted to buy it. And then joined ProQuo about 3 years ago, and we'll take you through some of the logic as to why we've built what we've built as we go.
Awesome. Okay, great. Guys, a lot of you had asked us questions leading into today, and we've used some of those questions to formulate the presentation and today's agenda, but we really would encourage you not to be shy. If there's something that's on your mind, something that you want to know more about, either unmute yourself, or if you would rather just drop a comment into the chat, and Bridget will field those questions for us. So we would love to make this an interactive presentation. We're going to stop along the way and pause as well to give you guys the opportunity to interject. So really would encourage you to ask away. There's no silly question. We're here to help. So today's agenda, we're going to start by defining your brand's opportunity, understanding what that means, helping you understand what your category is, what your competition is, and how your target audience is made up. And then we'll move into defining how your brand can set its brand objective to kind of shape your strategy. We'll move into positioning your brand to own the opportunity that you've found within section 1. And then we'll work on communicating your brand to meet its objectives. And finally, we'll put it all together. And we'll leave you as well with a really handy template, which you can use to kind of build your own brand strategy behind if you'd like to, using all the stuff that hopefully you would have learned today. So first and foremost, I guess the question we all have is, what is a brand strategy? And it can actually sometimes be a little bit nebulous. And a lot of times when you're faced with the reality of needing to create a brand strategy for your own brand from the start, you don't always know like where exactly it is to begin. So Jim and I wanted to kind of break down what building a brand strategy means for you. And we've created the template, like I mentioned, which we'll share at the end, that will take all the components of today and put that all together for you. So you'll be able to do kind of your own brand strategy on a page, if and when you're ever asked to present one to your stakeholders or investors or the like. So at the heart of it, a brand strategy really defines what it is that your brand stands for. At the core of your brand is what is it that you're all about? You know, how are you positioned within a category, and how is your positioning kind of relevant to consumers, the category, and versus your competition? And most importantly, the question that you need to answer is, what's the plan for your brand to deliver a real commercial impact back to the wider business? All right. The second element of a brand strategy looks at your promise to customers and to consumers alike. And the question around that is specifically about what's it that your brand is delivering to people? What do people want and need that your brand's going to serve them with? And what benefits are you going to lean on? And what elements of the category are you going to own to deliver against? And we'll come into later in our presentation to figure out and present to you a framework by which you can understand the category and you can understand how your brand relates to customers. Third and foremost, you'll want to define how it is that your brand presents itself to the world. And we'll come on to understanding exactly what that means later on in Jim's section around communication. At the heart of it, executing a well thought out brand strategy really creates a solid data-driven plan to drive your business forward. And it gives your brand a structure and creates landmarks by which you can measure success. So when you have a brand strategy nailed down on one page, it makes sense. It's all clear and wrapped up. You can tell whether or not things like the creative that you develop or the NPD that you launch or the decisions that you're making within your marketing, whether those are actually authentic decisions and make sense for your brand. So think of your brand strategy a bit like a compass for your brand. Super important to get set up from the start. So let's kick into it, starting with defining your brand's opportunity. All right, we're going to cover 3 C's, starting with the category and starting with what is the definition of your category. A lot of times, categories can be slightly nebulous to define as well. We're going to talk about Fever Tree as an example throughout today as a brand that will kind of string through end to end, so you can see how Fever Tree itself might be defining its category. At the highest level, you could think of a category like gin, for example. A gin brand, for example, might be involved in the category of premium spirits. And in the UK, that category is worth 11 billion pounds rather, in the UK. And you can break that category down into subcategories like whiskey, which represents 30%, or rum, which represents 28%, vodka, which represents 22%, and gin, which represents 20%. So if you're a gin brand, it's really important to first define your category, but also to understand your position within the category. So here, you're 1/5 of quite a large pie. So you can own the gin market, but you can also figure out ways to build a brand strategy to figure out how you might be able to steal some whiskey, rum, and vodka drinkers and make them maybe potentially try gin for the first time to gain a bit of share within that category. The second C that we're going to talk about is your customers. And what's really important to understand is what those people need from the category that you're operating in. There are 16 different things that you can look at which make up the relationship that people have with brands in a particular category. And they're here on the right. Some of you in today's call may be familiar with Quo 16 drivers. Some of the drivers that we have are drivers which are representative of your brand's power to seduce people towards it. So you can think of it like, what is it about my proposition that customers are really drawn to? And those are drivers like attraction. How well does your brand appeal to people at shelf? It's empathy. How well does it understand people's needs? It's aspiration. Is it a brand that people feel is really special and drawn towards? Is it an innovative brand that has thought leadership about it and has momentum? Things like clarity. So is the role of the brand for the customers clear in their lives? Red Bull is a really good example of a brand that has strong clarity because you know when and why to use it. It gives you energy. Relevance. So is the product that you're offering relevant to people? Performance. In the case of gin, does it taste good? Does it refresh me? Is it different to other brands that are out there amongst its competitive set? Do customers know why your product is unique? There are also kind of relationship drivers of persuasion, which relate much more to how a brand is perceived to behave in market, how people see the brand in market, and that can shape their relationship with it too. And those can be equally emotional and rational as well. Emotional drivers of persuasion can be things like integrity. So when faced with a choice, do your customers believe that your brand does the right thing? How popular do your customers feel your brand is? To what level of transparency is your brand an open and an honest one? Does it connect? Do people relate to the way that your brand behaves? And finally, in the bottom right corner, you see kind of rational drivers of persuasion. And those can be things like how consistent or reliable does your brand appear? Is your brand an accessible one? Is it easy to use? Do people feel that your brand's worth paying for, which is value for money? And finally, familiarity is your brand something that people know, a thing or two about? Do they have a deep understanding of it? So when thinking about your customers, you really want to figure out what it is that people need from your category and how your brand will best position itself within that. So if we look at kind of the example of premium spirits, what you can see here is that actually drivers which are colored in green are drivers which people feel they're drawn to most within the category. So you can see in the upper left quadrant, it's quite an emotionally seductive category. So customers kind of feel that brands need to deliver on performance. In the bottom left, you can see, which is great taste. But they also feel it needs to be quite an aspirational offering. It needs to be attractive and it needs to feel like an innovative offering. So when you're building your brand strategy, it's really important to know what customers expect from your category. But equally, if you're a disruptive brand, if you're a challenger brand that maybe isn't the market leader within the premium spirits market, you may actually want to focus on building your brand strategy behind things which are slightly underdeveloped. So building a brand that has strong connection, or building a brand that's super consistent, or even the lighter kind of shades of red of integrity, while still doing a really solid job in what people feel that they need from the category most. Fever Tree was a really good example of a brand on our platform that operates obviously within the tonic segment, which tends to be quite rational. So you see drivers on the bottom of their category looking quite bright green, and Fever Tree as a brand actually does emotional drivers really well, which makes them quite a disruptive player in their category and what they use to build their brand strategy behind. Equally important is understanding kind of your competition. So when you look at your competition, you'll want to understand who are the other brands kind of playing in your space and which of those 16 drivers might they be doing well against. So when you look inside the ProQuo platform, all the data that you receive on your brand, you also receive on your competition too, and actually any number of your competitors. So you're able to really easily see within the category where your brand should be playing, the white space opportunities your brand has to drive category value, and which spaces your competition might be trying to own, which you either can compete against or shift away from, essentially to create your own unique space to play in. This is a view actually inside of our platform, just really quickly, using the same example of the premium gin market, and also looking at if you were the brand manager of a gin product. What you can see is your brand indexed across the middle, and competitor A, say that's your nearest competitor, indexed off of you. And what you're able to do to help shape your brand strategy is understand, first and foremost, what's most important within the category. So you see all the way on the left, the driver of performance is deemed to be most important, all the way down to connection on the right, deemed to be the least important in the category. And you can see in the yellow dots where your competitor is ahead of you when they appear above the index, and where your competitor is weaker than you, where they appear below your index. So here competitor A has a leg up on performance, and they also have a leg up on attraction, but you as the brand manager have a leg up on aspiration and innovation. So if you're setting out to build your brand strategy, it's important to know where your brand stands. So you do really well aspirationally and from an innovation perspective, but you've got a bit of work to do on your taste, your performance, and your attraction. And knowing that that's really important in the category is a powerful thing for you, because it allows you to triangulate where your brand stands, what's important within the category, where your competition performs, and therefore what you need to do to kind of strengthen the power of your brand and the relationship that it has with people. So you guys asked before the webinar a couple of questions, really great ones. And so we pulled out a few here that Jim and I were just going to tag team answering. So the first question that you asked, how do you create a demand for a challenger brand competing in a category dominated by large corporation brands? Jim, I have a perspective on this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and all on this first, since I've talked a bit already. What do you think about this one?
So I think it's about looking at it is about looking at that balance between what people are looking for and what they're currently being served. So if you just flick to the next slide, Michael, you can see the picture that if you took Fever Tree out, which is this the white line across the middle, you'd see that by and large, Schweppes are doing a pretty good job across most of the drivers. And on the left-hand side, you can see what people are most looking for in the category. And apart from performance, which is taste, so performance is the driver that you can choose by category, and in this case, it's taste. You've got consistency, familiarity, accessibility as the next three top drivers. And that is suggesting that this category, the tonic water category, is really commoditized, because they're pretty well. They're all rational, and they're all in our activation section. So it's about kind of so it's about kind of what you'd expect in an established market where there's been very little disruption. They've kind of got this really rational activational kind of persuasion drivers being the most important. However, on the right hand side, you can see the least important drivers are things like innovation, differentiation, aspiration. Makes the same point. It's that that hasn't been given to people in this category for decades, so it's not seen to be important. If you look at what Fever Tree have done, is on the left side, they've done a pretty good job across those most important drivers, whilst at the same time, on the right-hand side, they have been innovative, differentiated, and aspirational. So they've kind of used the lack of those things on the right to disrupt a market, but at the same time, and it's a really important point to note, they've also taken care of what people really expect from the category. Because you could come in, differentiate, be innovative, and be aspirational, but not get the basics right, and you fall flat. So I think that would be the approach that I take, is understand what people are currently getting from the market, and then look for opportunities of where you can outperform the incumbent corporates like Fever Tree did.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this chart is it is bringing together the category, the competition, and the consumer all in one space. So you can, as Jim said, quite easily see what is it that people feel they need from the category. You know, all 16 are important, but are you delivering against what's needed most and competing really strongly against what's needed most to make yourself kind of hygienically fit to compete in the category? But where can you carve out a competitive advantage for yourself? Find a space that maybe no one's focused on, go really hard and major in those spaces and be really disruptive. And that will also help you if you're building a trade story, for example, show a buyer how you're adding category value because you're doing something different to a lot of the bigger players out there.
And Franco in the chat asked if you should have more than one driver per brand, and hopefully, Franco, that answers the question that you should really have multiple. So it's looking at where you want to play. I think I would suggest that you always want to get the most important drivers sorted, but also look for ones where you can disrupt, particularly if you're challenging incumbent brands.
Yeah. And just the final thing on this is that what you'll often notice is that the market leader is the one that often shapes the perceptions of a category, which is why if you were to look at Schweppes, for example, in their kind of positioning within the category versus what people expect from tonic waters, you'll see them to be quite similar. So in Fever Tree's case, given that they're smaller than Schweppes, they're best placed to actually do something different. You know, they can, drive their taste, their consistency, their familiarity, and their accessibility well, but they don't need to major on that because Schweppes is doing that. Schweppes is basically owning that space. What they can do is they can find a different space within their 16 driver profile to differentiate. And that will only help them kind of disrupt and stick out more. Let's go on to the second stage, which is all about defining your brand's objectives. And Jim, I'll hand it to you. I'll continue to drive if that's all right. The deck, you just let me know when to advance the slides, and hopefully that advancement works for you.
Almost like we rehearsed. Perfect. So first up, it's about defining your target audience. So who do you want to buy your product is the first question. And of course, this won't be kind of new news to you guys, but really there are kind of four buckets that we would typically look at. The first could be location. So you can segment people by where they are. So is it country, region, city, could even do urban, rural. So figure out kind of where the people who are most going to use your product are likely to be. Then you can do demographics. So we typically look at age, gender, and then kind of usership, which we'll look at in a second. But you could also go to the depths of occupation, socioeconomic standing, and so on. Then lifestyle. So it could be a mindset thing. Are people who have particular hobbies going to be more into your product or not? This again, when we're in the kind of world of premium spirits, it's another one. It's like, are they in a place where they want high quality, it's a one-off experience, or do they want to kind of go bananas and have a massive night out? Kind of that will implicate the way you the different marketing activities that you do. And then behaviors. So this is one we put a lot of emphasis on, is users and non-users, usage occasions, and then kind of propensity to buy. I think user, non-user is a really important one, because you kind of want to understand, okay, so where is your bullseye? So who are the people who use your category? And then where are people that you want to pull them in and grow the category? And then that also applies at a brand level. Where are people that are going to use your brand, and then who are using other brands that you want to recruit? We've got an example here, which is a bit of a tongue twister, but it's 25 to 40-year-old male and female urban dwellers who are fashion conscious, early adopters, and have a propensity to buy luxury brands. There are 3 of those in the whole world, and you may want to target all 3 of them. This, I guess, illustrates, and I'm not one of them, as you can probably tell, you can go to a real depth of kind of defining your target. And I would advise that you don't go to such a crazy level as this, because you reduce your kind of pool of people dramatically. What I would try and do is say, okay, what are the age brackets? Kind of where are they? What's their kind of mindset? And then what kind of other things do they buy? And then you're in a pretty good place, and hopefully the pool is big enough that you can actually build a business. And that kind of takes us on to the next slide, which is about kind of what are you trying to achieve with your business. And you want to kind of set your intentions from the beginning to give yourself a direction as to what you're actually trying to achieve. And we've given a few examples here which will hopefully resonate, and of course there are more, and happy to answer questions if you have them. But if we go to the next slide, Michael, this first one is about, it could be that your objective is to grow distribution. And I would suggest that there are a lot of brands on the call that we're familiar with, that this is a key business objective. So you need to convince retailers that your brand's worth it, and to prove that your product is actually better than the competition. So this gym brand example would be drive distribution by breaking into Tesco's, increasing your share of shelf in Sainsbury's, and gaining secondary placement in impulse. So it could be that you're going in to sell in afresh, like you're not currently in there. It could be that you're in there and you want to increase your distribution. We've had brands who've used our data, for example, to go into retailers and say, look, we're already better than these competitors, so give us more stores. And they've achieved kind of incremental distribution in convenience, for example. So that can be one. The second is kind of gaining penetration. So this is about getting into more households, getting more people to buy into you. So you need to find ways to increase your brand awareness, to keep your brand front of mind, make your brand the one that they choose. And so you can articulate this objective by getting into 100,000 more households, or drive 2% in household penetration. And you do that by kind of getting 4% in unprompted awareness by the end of a certain time frame. So that's simply about growing your footprint in households in a given market. Driving market share. So this is a bit more competitive. So trying to get non-users or users of other brands to buy your brand instead. And we'll show you an example of it through our data in a sec. So you're trying to steal share from a competitor and take your share from X% to Y%. And of course, then you work out kind of how that translates into revenue. That's another route that you can go down. Another one is growing the category. So kind of, can you expand your category by doing different things, by getting in more users, driving more usage, getting more trade up. So that's things like, you know, introducing new flavors or introducing new usage occasions. So if a gin and tonic's happening kind of in the evening on kind of weekends, can you try and get people to have them every day? And of course you want to do that with yeah, good social conscience. Anyway, so an example of this could be 3% increase in penetration of the premium spirits category while driving spend per buyer. So that's another way, kind of, you know, if you do gift packs around this time of year, for example, you slam in a glass that costs you an extra £1 and charge an extra £3. That's a good way to get people spending more on the category, and often used in gifting around this time of year. Next is disrupting the category. So if you're in a category that's kind of has a load of larger players, a bit like the Fever Tree example we've been showing, you can go into that space with a pretty good kind of Trojan horse approach of, it's a sleepy, commoditized category, and you go in with something mixed up, and the giants are all asleep for quite a while, and then suddenly it's too late for them to do anything about you. So it's all about kind of creating a new perspective of the category to go in and mix it up. Then the next thing, so that's kind of, okay, so you want to kind of gain penetration or disrupt the category or get into more stores or whatever. Then you've got to figure out your marketing objective, and that is different to the business objective. The business objective is kind of, what are you trying to do? And the marketing objective is, how are you going to do that? So how do you want your target audience to, and it may be the kind of projected audience that you want to feel about your brand. That audience might be the retailer, it might be people in the category you're trying to bring across to your brand, or it might be people you're trying to bring into the category. And how will your marketing drive that business objective that you're trying to achieve? So figure out what you're going to do and say in order to achieve your business goals and reach your brand's opportunity. That's how you kind of articulate the marketing objective. This is a really good one, and this kind of shows, for a marketing objective that is for growing market share, your brand is the white one along here, and you can see that the two areas in the most that you're kind of inferior to the competitor A are the two of the three most important drivers in the category. So performance, so taste in this case, and attraction. So if you're going to grow market share, these are the two things that you need to do, and that's and we'll show you kind of how you can articulate that in a sec. So what this helps you do is identify what you need to do in order to deliver your business objective. I think there's a question in a little bit about how our methodology can help you understand, link the kind of business objective with your marketing objective, and we'll talk about that in a while. The way we kind of, this is probably teaching my grandmother to suck eggs, but the way you can kind of bring this together in a kind of, I don't know, catchy way is get to buy. So you're getting a target audience, so define your target audience, to do something that will deliver your business objective. So spend more with you, buy more products, trade up, whatever, buy, and then that's how you're going to get them to do that. So the example we have for this kind of mythical gin brand is, get the 25 to 40-year-old fashion conscious urban dwellers. These ones are not into luxury products, which is a relief, to choose your gin brand over competitor A. And you do that by convincing them that we're more attractive and better tasting. So you saw that we were inferior on attraction and performance, so taste. And so what you're trying to do is convince people that actually that's not the case. We're better than that. Therefore, you steal share from competitor A among 25 to 40-year-olds, and therefore you deliver your business objective, which is incremental revenue and incremental market share. So this was the question I was alluding to. So what is, well, I think there's a typo, but anyway, whatever. The holistically and effectively integrating a business strategy and a brand strategy. And I think I've put in a slide on the next slide, Michael, which This is, I've anonymized it because it's one of our clients' data. But what this shows is their Quo Score over time, and then their sales over the same time frame. And what you can see in the green dots and the red dots are the marketing activities they've uploaded into the platform to show when they've done something. What we try to do is integrate your commercial performance with the way people feel about your brand. And that's really important, because looking at the two in isolation, you don't see kind of the cause and effect. So here you can see that the green dot on the left is where the brand has launched a marketing activity. You can see that the sales kind of stay pretty steady, but the Quo Score is going up. Then they come off, the sales falls away a little bit. This is the dotted line, the white dotted line, I should say. And then they do another activity and the sales pick up immediately, and so does the Quo Score. And then it flattens out again, and then they do more activity and the brands go up. I would say it's, as you will expect, the reason it looks like a heartbeat is the top of the beat is probably promotional activity. But you can see there's a general trend upwards in the sales, and there's a trend upwards in the Quo Score. So what we help you do is understand what you need to try and do to win, and then we track your progress over the course of those activities alongside your key commercial metrics. So I hope that answers that question. Michael, I lost I think 7 attendees in that section, so do your best. Try and keep them.
Thanks, Jim. No pressure. So now we've talked about kind of your business objective, your marketing objective, and then how that can all come together to help shape kind of how your brand might kind of position and present itself. We'll go into the next section, which focuses on how your brand can kind of position itself to own the opportunity that you've identified. And at Proquo, we have 13 levers of marketing that we look at brands through, that we help kind of guide brands towards realizing their brand strategy. And today we're going to cover briefly 6 of them. The first is all about kind of your brand's proposition. What is your brand's purpose and promise to people, and how does that fit kind of with your brand's opportunity? Jim and I, as we said, used to work at Lynx, and some proposition statements are more articulate than others. But back in the day, it was to help guys win the mating game, which we know is a falsified promise. At Proquo, our proposition might be, we are a brand management platform which helps challenger brands grow bigger, faster than others around them. And when it comes to the product sides of things, you really want to lay out the different benefits that your product is offering and how those benefits can actually affect people, whether they are customers or people involved with the category. And benefits traditionally can either be functional or they can be emotional. And if we just take them each in turn, a functional benefit tends to be about the physical effect or the efficacy that the product has on people. So sticking with the deodorant example, it might be that there are microcapsules in the product that when you sweat, the microcapsules burst and fragrance is released. That's a functional benefit of a product. It keeps you dry, it keeps you feeling fresh, and there's a tangible physical thing that's helping it do that. The emotional sides of things are more about, they're intangible, but they're more about how they make people feel. So, if you use a cosmetic to make you feel confident, or you wear a fragrance to keep you feeling attractive, those are benefits too, but they're more emotionally driven. Jim, taking on the next 2, packaging and price.
Yeah, so packaging is an interesting one, because I think I remember one kind of quite senior guy at Unilever once saying to me, where do you think your most prominent point of communication is? And I was like, well, obviously it's TV ads or whatever. And he was like, absolutely, that's not true. If you think of the number of stores you're in, and the number of facings you have, and the number of people who interact with each of your products, actually your packaging is one of the most important places for you to communicate. It's not just about kind of the brand, it's about what the brand stands for. How are you going to deliver what people are looking for through your product? And you've got to communicate that on your packaging. And I think it's a really important point that is often missed, is it is not just something that makes you look beautiful, makes you look aspirational and attractive. It's also a really important place for communication. So think kind of beyond just how beautiful your packaging is, but it's also what is it saying. It can be that by putting less on it, by making it more beautiful, you're communicating the luxury or aspiration that you want to. But have a think about kind of exactly what it is you're trying to say and exactly what you're trying to communicate through your packaging. On price, so again, this is more of an operational one, but it also has implications on some of the more emotional drivers. So there's a question about kind of what is your price and what margin do you want to make, and how does it compare to your competitors and the average and so on. But it's also what are you trying to say? Are you kind of, I think it's one of the most genius marketing campaigns was the reassuringly expensive from Stella, because they were confronting a challenge, which was they had a high price perception, but they built up their value. So they were saying, actually, it's worth paying that price. It's not, okay, we're expensive, we need to reduce the price. And that's one of the things that we do a lot of work with our clients is on perception of value rather than being expensive. And it's a really important distinction to make between just price slashing instead of building your perceived value. So that would be my guidance on prices. Look at it as value rather than just what price point you're at.
Cool. Thanks, Jim. And all 6 of these that we're covering today are ways that you can think through kind of how your brand presents itself on a page when it comes to your brand strategy. And the 5th that we'll cover is your promotional strategy. And it is often quite linked into price, and it can relate obviously to the offers or the discounts that you're kind of giving to people, which often are a trade-off to drive in trial for your brand. The point of caution when you're setting your brand strategy is to look at the frequency of the deals that you're offering and the depth of the discount by which you're offering them at. It's quite a timely one to talk about, but like Black Friday coming up next week is a time when a lot of brands go on deal. And so you just want to be careful when you're planning your promotional calendar, because there's a common trap that brands can fall into, which is they try to compete on price and they try to compete on over promotion. And what that ends up doing, if you're not careful, is training people to purchase your brand only when it's on discount. So when planning out your promotional strategy within your brand strategy, I'd really encourage you guys to look at the frequency of discount, the depth of discount, and use that kind of power carefully to drive trial into your brand. The last thing you want to do is to devalue the power of your brand by over promoting it. The last one that we'll talk about is place, and that's kind of setting out within your brand strategy where people could potentially experience or find your brand, both in terms of the channels that you'll offer your brand to be found in, and also kind of where people might find your product in store and on shelf. So you might be a brand that's really trying to drive your aspiration, and therefore you might want to go after a grocery outlet like a Waitrose, potentially, rather than an Asda. Or you might be a brand which has a place challenge. You might be a frozen baby food brand like Little Dish, and you might have some difficulty defining where your brand should be positioned in store. Should it be within baby food? Should it be within frozen? How do you make sure that people are easily able to find your product at shelf? And when they do, where on the shelf should it appear? So traditionally, if you're a premium priced product, you might be more towards the top. If you're a discount product, you might be more towards the bottom. If you're eye level, you might be more along the lines of the market leader. And you'll want to define within your brand strategy, what channels is it that you want to go after, whether that's grocery or impulse or convenience or club or what have you, and what aisle you want to be found in and where on shelf you want to be. Your brand strategy should lay all that out for you. So you asked, how can we achieve differentiation among our portfolio brands while staying true to our brand character and standards? And there's a couple different ways that you can actually look at this question, because you can look at it from a brand that operates in as one brand across different categories. So maybe has a master brand that's in all, 3 or 4 different categories, or potentially a brand that has a lot of different offerings within different price points, for example. Jim, you had a good perspective on this one. Do you want to kick us off with how we discuss this question?
Yeah, I think that if you take one of those examples, so let's stick with it being one single brand, but with multiple different categories or different, within the portfolio, then your top brand kind of strategy and your brand point of view is consistent. You just articulate it slightly different in different categories. So if you're in personal care and your kind of core product is in fragrance, then you want to make sure that when you create a product that's in shower gel or soap or whatever, shaving, that doesn't compromise the whole kind of core value of your product, which is that it has great fragrances. So it's about keeping the strands the same, but finding the category articulation that best links back to the parent brand kind of point of view and articulation. Same with pricing. Like if you the more operational things, if you have a completely out of whack price on one product versus another, or they're not in the same kind of band, then you might either, if you're a premium product, you might completely undermine that premium positioning by bringing out something really cheap. Same in distribution. If you're suddenly if you're a kind of premium alcohol brand and you're only in the kind of finest bars in town, then suddenly you're kind of another portfolio product appears in Tesco, then you're completely undermining the whole core proposition of being a luxury kind of premium brand. If you've got, and I think this question was more directed towards a single brand, but with multiple kind of articulations of it in different categories. But if you are a brand that is say has like a Unilever that has a whole load of sub brands within it that are completely different to each other, then it's slightly more about kind of having a point of view as a company. So are you about sustainable living? Are you about kind of super premiumizing a whole different kind of set of things of categories in people's lives? In which case you've got to make sure that one brand doesn't let the rest of the stable down, and you've got to stay true to that feeling. So I think you keep consistency through having the same kind of tone of voice and same messaging and same point of view. You bring differentiation through the different categories that you're in. We had a strategy, a new variant strategy on links, where every year we would launch something new to recruit new users in. So it would be a new variant, a new type of fragrance. And it was a really good moneymaker because it brought new people in, but it didn't undermine the core user. So everything that you were bringing into the brand with that new product was incremental to the core that you built before. So you're using that consistency of the main brand, but introducing something new and exciting every year to bring in incremental revenue.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jim. This is our last section, and we've got about 10 minutes to go. So we'll move swiftly on to communicating your brands. We've talked about how to define your category, your competition, and your customer. We talked about the target audience, the get to buy framework, how you position yourself in market, and now how do you take that all together and communicate your brand to meet what it is that you want to do with it.
So this is kind of we will do an entire webinar on the creative process, and we have a great partner in Mother who are one of the finest kind of advertising and creative agencies around, and so we may well do a joint webinar with them. I know that Matt is on this call and he doesn't know about it yet, but Matt, we're coming soon. You need to kind of establish what creative ideas you'll develop, and then what is your single-minded messaging. So there you go, Matt's signed up. That's you signing up to a webinar coming soon, Matt. Thank you. What is your single-minded messaging? What is it that you're trying to create to that group in order to get them to help you drive your business objective. And the best way to do this, and I'm not just saying this because Matt's on the call, is to do it with your creative agency. Now, if you don't have a creative agency, then that's fine. You're still looking for that single-minded idea. But if you're going to then brief someone, it's so much better to bring them in early, because then they can help you kind of along the process and you can help them really understand what your business is trying to achieve. And then how will these creative ideas get people to act in a way that you want them to drive your business? So what is it about your messaging that is going to change people's behavior to drag them in? And that's kind of setting the creative brief. As I say, we'll do a whole webinar on the creative process, because we will never do it justice in the time that we have today. And if we tried to, we would be being misleading. I would say, and I know this is a little bit of a shameless plug, but we have a product called the Creative Lab. And what we're trying to do is help you optimize your creative as you develop it. So when you have kind of concept ideas or early presentations from agencies, you can lob it into our platform, and in a couple of hours, you get the results, and you can see, how do people feel about your brand now in its baseline? So how is your brand without this communication? And then when they've been exposed to the creative that you're planning to create, how do they now feel? And that is at a brand level, but then also at a driver level, which is really cool. Franco, I'm pleased you like the small beer company. And what's really cool is that you can see, so what do people feel about the small beer company now? And then when they launch these, when they have a whole load of ideas, which idea is having the most positive impact on which driver? And then they can take that into production and then lob it in again. So what we're trying to do is create something that helps you along the creative process, so you can refine and optimize as you go. Michael, do you want to take this one?
Yes.
Every time I speak, we seem to hemorrhage participants, so I'll let you answer this.
We're going to have to answer it quickly because we are running out of time, oddly enough, but we'll do this one quite quickly. How can we connect the consumer journey between so many platforms? The website, digital advertising, Instacart, Amazon, social media, and so on. So really, it's about understanding specifically within the creative process. I think one of the most important things to do actually when briefing a piece of creative is to understand what media that creative is going to be placed in and where people are going to experience that media. The prime example is like digital TV advertising or YouTube TrueView, where you've got 5 seconds before someone's able, in the 5 seconds, they'll probably hit the skip button. So what you really want to do is get, your brand out there from the start with the benefit kind of landed early. Whereas with TV advertising, sometimes you see those adverts where at the end they kind of reveal the brand, and that's kind of the kicker. So it's really important to understand what channel it is that you're briefing the creative for, and making sure that you optimize the creative message so that it works within the medium in which it's experienced. We've all heard about omni-channel as well, which means that consumers move in variable directions. It's not a linear path to purchase, that they experience brands across a lot of different touch points throughout their day. And consumers experience a lot of brands in a lot of places throughout their day. So it's really important to reinforce what your brand stands for and the creative message that you're delivering consistently across channel, so that every time they experience it, the creative is fit for the medium in which it appears, and the message is able to be consistently absorbed due to that fact. Now let's put this all together. We are obviously here to help in any way that we can. If you guys would like to get in touch with Jim or I after the webinar, we're more than happy to help you and your team kind of figure out what your brand strategy could look like. Our platform talks to people, as you saw at certain points throughout the presentation, we talk to people kind of every day about your brand, your category, and your competition. And we gather their feelings and their thoughts about those three things. And we can tell you and help you understand where it is that your brand should be positioning itself to win based off of what your key commercial objectives are for your brand. And as I mentioned at the start, we've created this little template. So just get in touch or raise your hand if you want, or drop a comment, and we can send through this to you. And it just like, we figured it could just help you guys create your own brand strategy on a page as you're starting to think through what 2021 will look like for your brand. Jim, I know you made this slide with the Santa hat on it, so I don't want to steal your thunder. Do you want to talk about the holiday cheer that we're offering for anyone that is interested?
Isn't that the best design you've ever seen? Uh, um, so this really, guys, is just to our if I'm completely transparent, our get to buy is get exciting and ambitious brands to join ProQuo by showing them that we're the best partner to help them grow. And in that spirit, in the shameless plug, we are offering anyone who signs up to ProQuo before December the 1st that they will get a free creative optimizer on us. So yeah, get in touch if you'd like to join us on that. And you can either get, as Michael says, get in touch with me or him or Bridget, and we will help you get set up. There was one final question from Diane, which says, does your approach work for complex multi-audience B2B brands with smaller budgets than consumer brands? Diane, the answer to that is really, we have to start at being able to find enough people to ask about your brand every single day, and that's how we do an always on an always on kind of approach. So what we tend to find with B2B brands is that it's very difficult to find enough people every day in order to get that always on view. So bluntly, if it's a small B2B business, it won't work on our always on platform. That said, we do have a whole team of consultants called brand partners, and they can do bespoke projects where you get exactly the same view as you've seen today, but it won't be always on. It'll be an ad hoc dip. So get in touch with us if you'd like to have a go at that. And I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Jim. Are there any other questions in the chat? Or, I mean, if anyone's on the line that wants to come off mute and has something that they'd like to ask, feel free to do so. If not, you've got our contact details here and our phone numbers, believe it or not. So give us a call if you'd like, or drop us a WhatsApp or shoot us an email. And we'd be, again, happy to help. We're always excited to talk to any and all brands at any stage of their development. And I really enjoy kind of figuring out kind of within different categories for different brands, how to most effectively kind of build brand strategy. So I would love to help anyone that needs a hand. So don't be shy. Feel free to get in touch. And if there are no other questions, we are bang on time. I guess I would just like to say thank you guys very much for joining today. And hopefully you learned something new. If you'd like to get a hold of that brand strategy template, just drop us a line and we'll send it on over to you. And if you'd like to take us up on the Creative Lab offer, do the same. And with that said, thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of the day and a good happy Friday and a great weekend. And hopefully see you on our next webinar next month. Take care, everyone.
Thanks very much, guys.
See you later.
Bye-bye.